All right. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So I want to read to you Sunday's Gospel. So, as you know, there's 4 Gospels in Kehk. And one of them is the Annunciation of St. John the Baptist. One of them is the Annunciation of St. Mary. And then the birth of St. John the Baptist. And then there's another one in there somewhere. And then the birth of Jesus, which is the 5th Sunday. So this Sunday, this 25th, is actually coincidentally Christmas. American Christmas is the Annunciation to St. Mary by the angel Gabriel. Okay, so I want to read to you the Gospel, and then we'll kind of talk through it. Now Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste to the city of Judah, and entered the house of Zacharias and greeted Elizabeth. And it happened when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary that the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. It's a very interesting thing. In fact, has anyone ever seen this icon of Mary and Elizabeth meeting? There's a very beautiful icon, Mary and Elizabeth greeting each other. And then there's like little circles inside their wombs, and you have St. John the Baptist and Christ, and each one's kind of pressed up against the womb of their mom, and they're trying to touch each other, Jesus and St. John the Baptist, and they're trying to connect through the wombs, and it's this very story. And then she spoke out with a loud voice and said, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. But why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For indeed, as soon as the voice of your greeting sounded in my ears, the babe leaped in my womb for joy." So this is Elizabeth speaking. Hey guys, come on in. It's okay, just leave your shoes on and your boot. Just call you Gimpy for short. Yeah, that's okay, there's no lightning here. And lightning usually strikes, but not. I turn it off. It's a setting. Okay. And then, so Elizabeth is speaking and saying, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. But why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me?" So Elizabeth is humbled by the fact that this has all happened, right? That St. Mary shows up, and that she gets somehow that St. Mary is the mother of the Lord. "For indeed, as soon as the voice of your greeting sounded in my ear, the babe leaped in my womb for joy." So she obviously had some movement. "Blessed is she who believed, for there will be a fulfillment of those things which are told for her from my Lord." And Mary said, and this is called the Magnificat, right? That this is the prayer that Mary said. That's just like one of these classic, beautiful things. She said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior. For he has regarded the lowly state of his maidservant. For behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed." Hang on, let me see something. Yeah. "For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name." Oh, wow. Okay, I had the wrong thing. All right. "For he has regarded the lowly state of his maidservant, and for behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And mercy is on those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has put down the mighty from their thrones and exalted the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away. He has helped his servant Israel, and the remembrance of his mercy." So, and she went on a little bit further, but let's just kind of go back and dissect some of the things that St. Mary said. The first thing that we see in all of this is the calling. We see that St. Mary is called to something that's really beyond comprehension, right? So, first thing is, she says, I don't know a man, right? So never in the history of mankind has something like this happen, right? Where someone who isn't married just has a kid, right? Other than someone lying, okay? But other than that, that doesn't happen, right? So you're being called to something that is historically never, right? And that's a pretty big thing. And what this reminds us of is that And when we read the account of Saint Mary being called by Angel Gabriel, we read that she said something. It says something interesting. It says she was troubled at what? At what manner of greeting this was. Troubled. Okay? And so I want to start pulling all of this together, right? She's troubled at the greeting. She's troubled at the calling. She's unsettled by this, isn't she? Now, why would she be unsettled? Now, is the birth of Christ God's will? Sure, right? So haven't you all heard that when something is God's will, that you feel peace inside? Isn't that the telltale sign of God's will, that there's peace inside? Was there peace inside Mary's heart? No. She's kind of freaked out. She's a young girl. This guy with wings just told her, you're going to get pregnant and you don't know a man. And that's freaking her out. And she's troubled by it, as would anyone be. And this brings us to a very important point, which is that the calling that God gives us, and he calls us to very different things, isn't necessarily full of peace, right? I mean, you know, you look at the calling of Jonah, right? Was Jonah full of peace? No, he didn't like any of it, right? He knew it was God's will. He knew what God wanted him to do, but yet he was like, yeah, I'm not interested. This isn't bringing me any peace right now. In fact, I'm going to go that way, the opposite direction than what you're calling me. And so when we get called by God to do whatever it is, that's not always going to come with a lot of warm fuzzies, right? In fact, the calling of Saint Mary, right, ended up what? Doing what to Saint Mary? Was any of it good? Look at Saint Mary's life. Was any of it good? So she has to leave pregnant, middle of the night, right? Get on a donkey or whatever it is, go all the way to Egypt to hide out for years. And if you go visit Egypt, you can see the path of the Holy Family. They're all over the place, right? They're just hopping from place to place, right? And then she comes back. She watches her son persecuted his entire life. You've all watched The Passion, right? I'm sure. And one of the beautiful things about The Passion was the striking image of Saint Mary, which I had just never thought of before, watching her son get beat. And that is not pleasant for any mom. And watching him get, falsely accused and persecuted his whole life, right? In fact, he's always constantly, and even in the 3.5 years of his service, he's in and out of different cities, right? In fact, when Lazarus died, and they were like, we're going to go back. He said, we're going to go back to Lazarus. One of the disciples made a crack, right? Does anyone remember what he said? He said, let's go die there. You know what he meant? He says, they're waiting for you back there. If we go back, set foot in that place, they're going to capture you and kill you. So he knows this is not good news, right? Which is eventually what happened, right? So this is the life that she signed up for, right? And in fact, there's so many icons. You sent me one, right? I'll have to look up. There's this really nice icon. If I had screens, I could show it to you, but I can't. Let's see who can find it faster. Marina, I know you're looking too. Here, I'll find it. No, I can't find it. All right, you find it. Bada bing, bada boom.
This one, I got it.
You found it? Yeah. Here, why don't you show that to the group while I look for it. Yeah, here it is. You can show that side. This is the icon she sent me, and it's Christ wiping away the tears of Saint Mary, right? In fact, in the ninth hour litanies in the Agbeya, what do we say? We say, Saint Mary says, my insides are on fire when I behold your crucifixion, right? So she got to watch this. So now Saint Mary gets called, and it's miserable. It's a miserable calling from start to finish. She is even persecuted as his mom, right? And that's the calling. And so sometimes the calling that we get is not only not the calling that's going to give us peace, it's not the calling we want. And it usually involves what? Suffering, right? And St. Mary was no different, right? Her calling was a calling of suffering from start to finish. And so sometimes we think of Christianity, and I often use this expression as the cosmic vending machine, right? Where Christianity is the thing that's supposed to ease my pain, right? And makes my life better. And I pray and the bad things don't happen. And we're constantly fed by this stuff, pray for your exams and, God will bless you and help you, right? And if you do this and God will give you this, and, pray and God will give you more business, and pray and God will give you more. And it's like, so this God is just this like money pit, right? He's just Donald Trump with a lot of money, right? And he just hands out money if he deems that you've prayed sincerely enough for the stuff, right? And now, so what kind of God is this? This is the God of the world, right? This is the God of earth. This is the God of materialism, okay? So when he calls St. Mary, and nothing in the gospel supports this, right? His life was one of what? Suffering, difficulty. And even in his own life, and during the retreat that we just came back from, this point was made over and over, the peace that God gives us isn't a peace from the world, right? If you look at Christ's life from the very beginning, every aspect of it, you have him being betrayed by friends, you have him being persecuted by the clergy, you have him running from place to place, you have him helping people, and then they turn their back on him, and then they say, you're a devil, you're the head of the devils, you're the prince of the devils. I mean, no one's nice to him. And then his own disciple betrays him, and Peter cusses him out and swears, I don't know this guy. And then they kill him, right? Nothing good. And his whole life is lived as what? A homeless guy, right? He didn't even come with even a little bit. I mean, he says, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Right? So his whole life is this. So when he calls St. Mary, he calls her to what? That. The reason we respect her so much is not so much that she got picked. Oh, she's the good one. She got picked. It's not like that, right? We respect her for what she went through and what she dealt with, and how she just accepted it, right? And so sometimes when we get these callings, and they can be callings about service or they can be callings about whatever, God calls us to situations, and most of the time the calling is a difficult one. Right? And the calling can be as simple as someone's being a real jerk to you right now, or someone's being really impolite, or someone's being very insensitive, and someone's not being thoughtful. And the calling is, don't react, don't respond, don't attack back, don't gossip about this person, right? And that's the calling, and it's hard, right? And we're not talking about a St. Mary level calling here. We're talking about, someone didn't empty the dishwasher, right? And it's like, who didn't empty the dishwasher? I want names, right? We talked about this before, and right? This is the level at which we interact, right? We're not asking, someone to take my son and kill him, right? I'm not ready for that one, right? Let's just put that one on the side. Let's just talk about emptying the dishwasher first and washing the car and, the real big issues that I have to deal with. So St. Mary's calling was one of difficulty, which is why we respect her the way we do. But then when you read what she says, it's really quite amazing, because in it, she gets somehow what Christ is going to do. And this is so important. He has regarded the lowly state of his maidservant, for henceforth all generations will call me blessed. It's like she saw the future. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name, and his mercy is on those who fear him from generation to generation. Now comes the part that's prophetic. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. And this part, so important. And so, unfortunately, antithetical to what we see in much of our Christian experience. He has scattered the proud. Pride is not a part of Christianity. Arrogance is not a part of Christianity. It's certainly not a part of the church. Power is not a part of the church. So what Christ did, and she's going to say this over and over again, is she flips everything upside down. So I'll read it to you quickly. He takes everything we think and he flips it upside down. He has scattered the proud. He has put down the mighty from their thrones. So the thrones put down. And exalted the lowly. Took those who are low and put them high. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he sent away empty. He has helped his servant in remembrance of his mercy. So she's basically saying he's going to flip everything upside down. And if you look at what Christianity does, it does exactly that. It is a revolutionary concept, right? Power is inverted. And he says, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, right? That concept is foreign, right? Other than in Christianity at this time. Christ's teaching was radically different, right? His approach, radically different, right? In fact, even the approach of the kings of the Old Testament, David and Solomon and all his glory and all of these things, right? Very different. Christ comes and he's a homeless guy, right? And so what St. Mary saw was so important and something I want to talk about, right? Which is this concept of power, right? It's a very dangerous thing. I was just at a retreat and I was talking to some youth guys, and these guys in particular were what I call clergy groupies. They just hang out with clergy. They like to kind of, hang out with clergy and make sure everyone knows their name. And hey, Sayyidina, hey, Abuna, hey, whatever, right? No one says, hey, Archie, because I'm not on the list. And I kind of wanted to warn them about this behavior, right? And I just said, you have to be very careful, okay? Because what Christ did is he came to make the powerful lowly. And those on the thrones, he brought down. And those on the bottom, he brought up, right? And he gives lots of stories about this, right? He says, you don't want to walk into a wedding and go sit in the front, right? What happens when you go sit in the front? The head of the wedding says, sir, could you go please sit in the back? And then he takes the person in the back and he says, can you come up to the front? Right? There's this constant theme, right, of the first shall be last, right? Even the parable of the 11th hour, right? What happens? People work from the first hour, third hour, sixth hour, ninth hour, 11th hour. Then he pays the people of the 11th hour the same as the people of the first hour. Again, it's completely the opposite of all human logic and all human reason, right? This is what the church does. It's not about a human structure, right? And every once in a while, someone tries to put that into the church. It's very dangerous, right? I remember, I was at a church once, and someone came up to me and said, so who has the power at that church? I'm like, come again? Like, who are the power brokers at the church? Like, who really runs that place? Is it this guy on the Legna because he has a lot of money? Or is this guy because he has a business? Or is it this person? And I just kind of lost it on them. I was like, what is wrong with you? Right? What are you even talking about? Power at the church? Who's the main guy? The guy who washed the feet? Is that who we're talking about? I mean, that's what Christ did. And washing the feet, that wasn't even thing like, if you were the lead servant, you didn't wash the feet, because that's disgusting, right? You had to be like the loser servant to wash the feet, right? So it wasn't even the servant's job to wash the feet. It was like the new guy. It was like hazing, right? You're the new guy, you do all the feet washing. No, I don't want to do that. Yeah, you're the new guy. You do that for a couple of years, and then you work your way up to taking out the dog poop, right? So then Christ did it, right? And it's such a demoralizing, demeaning, humiliating thing that Peter said, you're not going to do it. I refuse it. And he had every right to say that. I mean, even me today, when we have the ceremony of the washing of the feet, and I see Abuna get down and start to wash my feet, more often than not, it brings a tear to my eye. I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to let him do this. I can't believe this. So I'm like Abuna Krolo sitting on the floor. And the church tradition is very rich here, right? On Holy Thursday, if you happen to be praying with the Pope, guess who sits on the floor and washes everyone's feet? The Pope does. The highest rank in the church does it. That's the order, right? For a reason, so that the highest rank never forgets his job, and his job, wash feet. That's what he does, because that's what Christ did, who's even higher than him, right? And so this idea of power in the church is very dangerous. This idea of influence in the church, very dangerous. This idea of money and who gets to make decisions, very dangerous. That's not what the church is. The church is service. The church is love. The church is being called to a job you don't want to do. That's probably not going to make you all that happy. That's going to cost you some hours of sleep and some tears and some effort. And that's okay. That's what we're called to, right? Because that's what Christ did. And once I see the church as this place where I get to shine, where I get to be in the front, where I get to be known, where I get to, I don't carry the cross and walk around and wear the white thingy and, be the lead in the play or whatever. And now I'm going to use the church to get me attention. It's become a very dangerous thing, right? And you see St. Mary here over and over, constantly saying, He has put down the mighty from their thrones, exalted the lonely, filled the hungry, rich He sent away empty, right? It's this upside down concept, and this is what Christ did, right? So what the period of Christmas reminds us of, right? And the reason, the angels say, glory to God in the highest, peace on earth and goodwill towards men. I was just talking with Marina about this. One of the reasons that the theologians say that Satan fell, like what pissed off Satan so much that he left, right? I mean, you got to ask that question, right? I mean, you're looking at God, you're like, yeah, he's pretty cool. He's got a lot of power. I'm out of here. And many of the theologians say it's because of his plan to make humans, to make people that are in his image and his likeness, and then to come and become a man himself. And Satan just kind of looked at that and said, no way, we can't accept something like that. Too much pride. Because this is really amazing, right? In fact, this is what Islam's problem is with Christianity. Same problem, right? How can you say God became a man? They just can't. I mean, you're not even allowed to depict Muhammad. You can't even draw a picture of him. Right? It's a graven image, right? That's just Muhammad. He's just a guy, right? Allah is out there, right? For God to become a man, that's beyond them, right? Because to them, God is what? Power, authority, right? And what Christ revealed to us is God isn't that. He's humility. He's love. He's simplicity. He's not simple. He is simplicity, right? And, I've mentioned this so many times, right? If Emba Serapion came in and he sat on the floor like this, we'd be like, oh, he's so humble. Look at Emba Serapion. He sat on the floor. And some little kid came, and instead of smacking the kid, he hugged the kid. Look at Emba Serapion. He's so cute. He hugged the kid. Isn't he humble? And you're like, but that's just Emba Serapion. He's just a guy, right? What happens if God does that? What happens if God comes and sits on the floor? What if God tried to wash my feet? God tried to wash my feet. Could you let him? I mean, I have trouble letting Abuna do it. Right? And imagine what the disciples are seeing, right? This person who walked on water earlier. And you're like, you're going to wash my feet. Right? So again, this upside downness is the reason for the season. Right? It's why Christmas is what it is. It's a marvel. It's a time to marvel at who and what God is. right? The most humble act in the history of earth, right? Becoming a human, coming down to this level, right? And integrating with us at every step, right? And, sorry, just gotta, someone's blowing up my phone. Let me just turn it off. Okay. Okay, and so the last thing I'll say about this idea of the proud and the scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts is when we think about why Satan fell, right? What upset him so much about what Jesus did, what God did, was ultimately, we say Satan fell because of his pride, right? And so what is this pride? What created this pride is he couldn't see God be humble. He didn't let that, he didn't want that to happen, right? And so what is pride for us, right? Pride for us becomes this state where we no longer see God, but we just see ourselves. And any time we just see ourselves and we focus on ourselves, right? And we kind of twirl around ourselves, right? This is what pride is. And the source of pride is always the same thing, right? Which is just a lack of awareness, right? Sorry, I'm getting really hot all of a sudden, right? I'm wearing too many layers. When we lose sense of who God is and what God is, and we just start to see ourselves as God, which is something we do often, right? We think of everything in terms of ourselves, right? This is ultimately the definition of pride. And it doesn't have to be that I have a big ego. It just could be I'm self-centered, or I only think about me, or how everything relates to me. And if you notice, our evolution as humans starts very much this way, doesn't it? Right? You think of a baby, right? What's a baby like? Very, very, very what? Self-centered, right? They don't think about anyone else. In fact, if they're not happy, what do? They cry, right? They don't get their way, they cry. They're hungry, they cry. You take a toy, they cry, right? There's some adults very similar, right? And they move on. We start off as babies as very self-centered, very selfish people, okay? And then slowly through life, we learn to not be so selfish and to play with others and to interact with others, right? And as we get older, right, we become, we start playing in the sandbox with the other kids, right? And the other kids, they take our train and we hit them right in the head. And then the moms come in and they say, Ta'ala habibi, let's just play together, and you share and we learn how to share. Then you start to get to friends, right? You become a teenager. And when you start acting selfish with your friends, right, what do? They say, see you later. Right? They don't like you anymore, right? And we've all lost a couple of friends or lost other, purposely lost other people because they're just too selfish, right? I mean, I have friends, and they're like, every time you want to go, like, I want to go here, I want to go here, I want to eat this, I want to do that. Have you ever asked me what I want? Once? No? Yeah, we're not going to hang out anymore, right? And there's a couple guys you all know, a couple girls you all know, that every time you guys get together, they always want to tell you where to go and what to do and everything. Right? And you're just like, yeah, I'm over this person. Let's not invite her. She's just going to try to run the show. She's what? Too selfish, too self-centered, too egotistical, only thinks about herself or himself, right? And then as we get older, right, our friends start to push back on us. And, we lose a friend here. We get a couple arguments there. People start to say, hey, you're not being very thoughtful of others. You're not thoughtful of me. You always want your way. And then we continue on in life and we get married, right? And then it becomes even more so, right? Now you're interacting with someone on a very close basis and they start pushing away the selfishness even a little bit more. right? They're like, hey, you're always thinking of yourself. How come you don't want to do what I want to do? How come we always do what you want to do? How can we eat where you want to eat? How come we decorate the way you want to decorate? And how can we plan the weekends where you want to plan the weekends? And now you have to interact with this other person on a much more intimate level. And that extracts even more selfishness out of us, right? Because now I gotta accommodate another human being in a very close, intimate manner, right? Not just like sexually intimate, but like in a much harder way, right? Which is emotionally intimate, right? And dealing with my own selfishness and what I want to do versus what they want to do, right? And as we start to move, and then we start to figure out this relationship thing, and we start to get better at accommodating another person, what happens? We get kids, right? And then the kids extract even more selfishness out of us, right? And so ultimately, the whole point of life is to move away from selfishness to selflessness, right? And that's what kids do for us, right? They help to make us less selfish, right? Because they're hard and they extract life out of you, basically, is what they do. They suck the life out of you. Two of my kids are here. And they're very, very appreciative in the end. Super, super appreciative of everything you've done for them. Kidding. No. And that's just part of the evolution, okay? And then if you notice, old people kind of come in two flavors, and I'm going to generalize. They're either grumpy, crabby, angry, get off my lawn kind of guys, right? Or they're really sweet and nice and tender and gentle, and they're just kind of one of two ways, right? People sort of just evolve into one of two branches. They either get bitter, and you see the tant who's gossiping and hating and hates everybody and talks about everyone and is constantly blah, 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 or the sweet teta who everybody loves and she loves everyone and that sort of thing, right? And the question is, were you able to extract the selfishness out of the person, or did they hold on and become bitter and jaded and angry, right? So pride is one of these things that is a constant battle and is the source of every single sin. Every sin is the same sin, whether it be greed or lust or pride or being controlling or being manipulative. It's all about myself, my ego, right? Am I being acknowledged? Am I being talked to? Am I being noticed? Am I being thanked? Am I getting the credit that I deserve? Am I being fulfilled? Am I being satisfied? Am I getting to buy all the things I want, eat the things I want, do the things I want, right? And so the opposite of pride and selfishness is giving, right? And that's what we see in Christ's life from the very beginning. Give, 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 give. Whether it be healing, whether it be performing miracles or feeding or whatever it was, or loving, give, 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 and at the end, give your life. And that's the direction. And so what St. Mary's saying in this interaction is, this is the God we follow, right? This is Christianity. It's not about power. It's not about accumulating status, right? And unfortunately, it bothers me so much when every once in a while you'll see someone, you can see them egging into the clergy. They want to be part of the clergy because they want power. They want to control things. They want to be the man. They want to be the boss. They want to be the guy that everyone looks to, right? And this movie, Man of God, this movie about St. Nectarius, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. It's a really great movie. There's this wonderful scene in the end where he gets passed up for patriarch. So he's supposed to be the patriarch, but these other bishops, these evil bishops, they manipulate him, and they take the voting box and they cheat in the voting. Very good bishop kind of thing to do. And they pick someone else, and his disciples very upset. It's like, you should have been patriarch, and his disciples really upset. And he says this line that I just loved. He says, "Power turns you into the thing you hate the most." And I just thought that's so deep. Power turns you into the thing you hate the most. And so as all of you grow and you become adults and you become more powerful in whatever it is you're going to do, whether it be in school or in career or in work or whatever you do, right? Just remember that power corrupts. And it is a special grace from God to have power and not to be corrupt. That's a miracle. You want to talk about miracles on earth? That's it. Having power and remaining humble. Having power and not using it for evil but for good. Having power and not exploiting it for yourself, but being benevolent and giving it to others. Right? This is the greatest miracle, right? And then this is why when Christ comes and Christmas reminds us that he could say, look, right now I could ask my Father and he can send legions of angels and wipe these people off the face of the earth. That's the kind of power I have in my backhand, in my back pocket right now, right? I could do this in a second. I could finish all of these people in a second. But that's not why I use my power. I use my power, and he even said it, I use my power to lay down my life. So I'm going to use all this power that I have to give myself. So I have absolute power and I have absolute sacrifice. That's ridiculous. That is found nowhere in the world. That's where everything gets turned upside down, right? That's what Christianity does. Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts, criticisms, conundrums, complaints, qualms?
Wasn't there a verse in the book of John that says more of him and less of me?
St. John the Baptist, yes. He says, he must increase and I must decrease. Yep. And I think that's the trick to Christianity. He must increase and I must decrease. Less of me, more of him. Let people see him, not you. And that's ultimately what the ego is. The ego is just you, right? And that's why we fast, right? Fasting is a time to be less you, more him, right? Less of myself. And the less of yourself there is, the better. The less of the old man, the old Adam, the better, right? Minimize me, right? In fact, this is what Christ said, right? He didn't say we should have, he didn't want us to be prideful, which means have a very high estimation of ourselves. And he also didn't say have a low estimation of yourself, right? He didn't say have low self-esteem. That's not the Christian calling. That's not what humility is, to have low self-esteem. What did he say? What about it, the self? High self or low self? He said no self. Deny the self, right? Deny the self. Either one of those is bad. Oh, woe is me, I'm a victim, I'm this, I'm that, I'm. Too many I's in those sentences. That's very self-centered. That's all about the self. Look at me, woe is me, I wish my parents did this to me and this guy did this to me. Or I'm amazing and I'm so smart and I'm an uber deacon and I'm an uber theologian and I'm an uber, athlete and I'm an uber whatever. Again, too many I's. Right? Just no I. And even we see this little touches, right? Even at the end of a sermon, what do we always say? Do we clap at the end of a sermon? Why not? Why don't we clap? Because if you clap, right? Say I give a sermon and you clap, who are you clapping for? Me, right? So how do I make sure that it's not I? What do I say? And glory be to God forever. And no clapping, right? This wasn't about me, and glory be to God. So seeing that it's God in everything and not in me, right? And again, this is the balance of Christianity, right? Are you dust or are you the temple of the Holy Spirit? What are you? Which are you? What are you? Are you just dust? Or are you a temple of the Holy Spirit? You're both. Are you a saint or a sinner? You're both, right? And this is the knife edge that we let rest on as Christians, right? Are we a harlot or a queen? We're both, right? And the problem is if you forget that you're one or the other, right? In Hosea, he took a harlot and he made her into a queen, married her as a queen. So now what? Imagine she starts walking around saying, you know what? I'm the queen. I'm the queen and you're nothing. And she walks up to some harlot on the street, says, you're a harlot, I'm a queen. You know what I'd say if that was the harlot? Honey, you used to be a harlot. Don't forget, you used to be a harlot. I'd say it. And if she was walking around saying, I'm just a harlot, I'm just a harlot, I'm just a harlot, I'd say, no, honey, you're the queen. And if she was my wife, I'd say, don't you ever forget you're the queen. Don't ever call yourself a harlot again. Right? So what I would do is I would correct her or us, depending on which way, right? Some people need to be corrected one way and say, yeah, don't forget you used to be a harlot. And some other people you have to say, no, you're a queen. Right? And people kind of fall off either side of those extremes. Right? And so we have to, pastorally, as friends, as Christians, right? When we see someone too harloty, or you say, no, you're a queen. Don't call yourself that. And if we see someone call themselves a queen, say, don't forget, right? So are you dust or the temple of the Holy Spirit? You're both. Are the image of God, or are you just a piece of whatever? You're both, right? And that is a very freeing feeling, right? Because now I know everything good in me is what? It's from God, right? And that way, I'm very humble, right? And I can also be very happy and proud, right? I can say, I have a gift. Right? If someone has a beautiful voice and uses it to sing, and there's nothing wrong saying you have a beautiful voice, and that has nothing to do with you, right? And I would have no problem saying, I have a beautiful voice. God has given me an amazing voice. I have an amazing talent. Is that prideful? Not at all, because I know I didn't do it. Does that make sense? Right? Someone is an amazing speaker and says, yeah, I'm an amazing speaker. That's a gift from God. I didn't do that, right? And I'm just going to use it for His glory. I take no credit in it. It's like saying, you have beautiful blue eyes. That's nice. They're not mine. I mean, I'm just born this way. I came out of the box this way, right? To be prideful in your blue eyes is kind of silly, right? Because you just didn't do anything for that. It's kind of silly, right? And so you can say, yeah, my eyes are gorgeous. And I have nothing to do with that. I take no pride in that whatsoever. Make sense? Right? So when we have these gifts, we can easily accept them and say, yeah, I have a talent. I'm very good at this thing. I'm an amazing artist. I'm an amazing whatever. I'm an amazing counselor. I'm an amazing listener. I'm an amazing pastor. I'm an amazing priest. No problem. Glory be to God. I have nothing to do with this. Make sense? Yes.
It strikes me looking at the icons up there and just in general what you've been saying. All the icons have the same face, like all the apostles have the same face. They changed the facial hair, but you can still tell it's like all the same person, copy and pasted. Where does that leave room for individuality and that kind of thing in Christianity? Because we keep saying, He must increase, I must decrease. But we all serve God in our own way. We all have an individual character that lends itself to certain things. So where do we make room for that?
So that's a very good question, because nowhere does God come and cancel us, right? Nowhere does God come and change our personality, right? Each of us have natural tendencies, right? And you see this in the saints. Like, in fact, on the sermon on Sunday, I read this quote by Bunab Shoi Kamen, and he basically said, the sins that we have and the weaknesses and our personalities, he's almost like, you almost need to celebrate them, right? Because they're the thing that propel you towards God, right? If you're an angry, passionate person, that's great, because that angry passion will propel you towards God. And what you see, actually, in all of these saints, right, is they're all very, very different, right? Their personalities extremely different, right? Even among just the saints here, even among the monks, their personalities are extremely different, right? And so God doesn't cancel their personalities, right? But what He does is He doesn't override us. He sanctifies us. He sanctifies who we are and what we are. And He basically just says, okay, now that thing that you are, that's for the glory of God, right? So think about the human body, okay, each cell has a function, right? Each cell does a thing. And the cell is celebrated in that this one is hemoglobin, and it does a great job carrying oxygen, and the more it carries, the better, right? And I don't want hemoglobin to be a brain cell, because then it's just going to be jacked up, right? Now we're not getting enough oxygen. Hemoglobin carries oxygen, right? Okay, just make sure. Because I'm an accountant, I say these things, and everyone's like, bones are white, right? Okay, good. Hard bones, good. Okay, so I'm a bone cell, right? And I want to be celebrated for that. Okay? However, right, as soon as a cell starts to not act the way it's supposed to act, right, it's cancerous, right? It starts acting in a different way than it was designed to act. Okay, so the cell is celebrated, right, for its own contribution, its own uniqueness. Every cell has a function. Every cell has a purpose. And the purpose of that cell is for the body, right? Is for the life of the body, the functioning of the body, the health of the complete body, right? And no cell ever thinks or should ever think it's independent of another part of the cell. Right? So even though I'm, pancreas, whatever side that's on, right? The pancreas, right? And I'm a great pancreas cell, okay? And then the brain gets cancer, right? I don't think to myself, phew, I'm glad I didn't get cancer. I'm glad the brain got cancer, not me, right? Because they're connected. So even though each one has its own character, each one is all connected, as in the words of Christ, to the head, right? And so they all kind of like a beehive, right? Everyone has its own unique function, but they all work for the collective good of the body, of the rest of the body, right? So I see my talents, I see my abilities, I see the things God's given me, and I say, and I can use that for my own glory, for the self, or I can say, I must increase and he must decrease. Not my talents must increase, right? In fact, Christ was very clear. You take your talent, you bury it in the dirt, not good. Right? Don't bury the talent in the dirt. That's not what we're called to do, right? But when he says the self, he's talking about the old man, the ego, the selfishness, the pride, the me part of me, right? Not the gifts that God gave me. The gifts God gave me, they're supposed to be given right back, I always tell this story, and I've told it many times. Probably, maybe none of you guys heard it. I just tell it a lot. But my dad used to always, when he would give me a cookie, he would give me 2 cookies, and then he'd say, "Can I have a cookie?" And of course, you feel like a real jerk not giving him a cookie, right? Because he just handed you 2 cookies. Okay, and I always viewed that as this is what God does with us. Right? He hands me 2 things. Says, "Could I have one?" And you're like, "Are you really going to say no?" Right? Can you? And so these talents and these abilities that God gave us, right, they're called for the glory of God, right? They're not called to be put in the dirt. In fact, that is a waste of the talent, right? And not a good use of what God gave us. Now I'm sort of denying God at some level, right? And that isn't humble, by the way. That isn't saying, oh, now I don't know how to do anything. I'm just not, no. I have this talent, and it's from God, and glory be to God, right? Wow, you're an amazing artist. Yes, I am. No problem, right? As long as I recognize what? I didn't make me an amazing artist, right? And, how do I know? Because I had iconographers staying at my house, and they're like, wow, you're really into icons. Can you draw? I'm like, I can't even draw a stick figure. Like, I can't draw a stick figure. And so don't tell me you learned this and you're better than me. You have a God-given gift I don't have. End of story, right? I will never become an iconographer. God didn't give me that. That's okay, right? And this is, by the way, how service functions in a church very healthily, right? Like, again, I was at this retreat and I was seeing the clergy that were there, and each one is so different, right? For those of you who were there, you could see how everyone had their own style. And I could imagine, right? And you can imagine, I'm sure some of the clergy going, oh, well, that clergy guy thinks he's blah, blah, blah. And, I've got this thing I could say, and that person could. But yet the beauty of it was celebrating their diversity, right? And how different each one is, and how each one was given a gift by God, Totally different, right? And it's ridiculous for the theologian guy to get really, jealous of the spiritual guy who's really jealous of the practical guy, because each one was given that gift. And they're just simply taking that gift and giving it back to God. And I can't be upset that I'm not the theologian guy. What do I care, right? I can be whatever guy I want to be. Come on in. Plenty of seats on the floor. There she is. She wants you to leave. I can't even hear you. Did I answer your question? Kind of. I mean, if you look at them, they all have the same face, which is the image and likeness of Christ. But yet each one has their own individual characteristics as well, right? So it's a blend. Each one looks like Christ, but doesn't, but has their own unique individual characteristics.
Say what you said about Pope Clovis not forming.
Yes. So in the icon of Pope Kyrillos in the back, those are his disciples, and those are the people that that he discipled. Those are all actual people. And if you look at the bottom, it says, oh, it's getting harder to stand. He says, as for us, let us disappear so that Christ might be manifest with his blessed glory. So the reason we put that underneath this icon is because one of the unique things about Pope Kyrillos is his disciples didn't turn out like him. Right? Everyone he discipled in his own unique way. And if he saw that one person had a knack for this thing, he'd encourage that thing, even though he didn't have that knack, right? And he didn't have that talent. And so instead of kind of squashing them and going, no, here's how you have to do it like this, be like me, he encouraged everyone's individuality in their own way and said, you grow, you do you, right? You be your own thing, but just take your personality and have it be sanctified by God, right? But don't be a carbon copy of myself. Thank you for reminding me that, yeah. And so that was one of the unique things about all the people he discipled. If you look at them, they're all super different. They're not like him, right? Which is really cool. And if you look at the disciples, they're all super different, right? Very, very different person. I mean, like Peter and John are opposites, like total opposites, right? And that's fine. They both operated in the same fashion. Any other questions? Any questions about the chapel?
Question about what you were talking about. Because you described that there's like two extremes. And like I can think about it in like my own life and I feel like I'm constantly like overcorrecting into like the opposite extreme. How do you like check yourself back to like, the middle?
I think God checks you. You have to worry. Don't worry about it. I mean, when you see someone kind of overextending themselves, a little bit too prideful, a little bit too judgmental of others, a little bit too self-righteous, God sends them what they need, and sometimes it's unpleasant. And when you see someone with a low self-esteem and down on themselves, and God sends them what they need, right? And it's usually a shot in the arm and a little piece of candy and a little something nice. And God corrects, God sends, right? And I think all we can do in our situation is we just pray in that situation and say, Lord, I'm feeling down. Lord, I'm feeling a little arrogant, and people all the time will come up and say, look, I can't stop judging. I've had people say that to me all the time. I can't stop judging, right? And I'm like, God will send you the thing that'll help you stop judging. And it won't be pleasant, but it's probably what it takes.
So I feel like naturally, like in certain aspects of your life, especially things that you feel like are in your control, which really but like for example, career, it's really easy like when you start accomplishing your goals, when you start like getting that job that you want or getting that career, that paycheck or whatever, it's really easy to start like thinking it's you.
I mean, you know, that's a good point. Like, you know, when you look at the story of the seeds, when Christ, you know, Christ is the sower sowing the seeds, and we look at the 4 different kinds of ground, right? We say there's, you know, the stony ground and the thorny ground and the good ground and the path, right? And then a lot of times we spend like, well, which one am I? Am I the thorny? Am I the good? Am I the this? Am I the that? And the answer is you're probably all 4. Right? And in some aspects of your life, you're very stony and hard, and in some aspects, you're very good earth, and some aspects, you're thorny. And then 5 years later, what used to be good earth now becomes very stony, and what used to be thorny is now good. And so life is a matter of oscillating, right? It's a lot of ups and downs, peaks and troughs and valleys and undulation, right? Because and we were just talking about this. C.S. Lewis, in his book Screwtape Letters, he talks about the law of undulation. As human beings, right, we are in the only thing constant in our life is change. It's just constantly moving, right? And every time you think you have it dialed in one aspect of your life, another part shifts from right beneath your feet, right? And so that's the only constant we have in life, is that there is no constant, right? And so that's both good and bad, right? It's very unnerving, especially if you want to be in control, right? But the positive part is once you recognize that you're not in control and you allow that to happen, right? And just kind of let that go and say, all right, well, now this is happening. Let's deal with that. It's good for us, right? At some level. And I think, you know, in the end, like, yeah, I mean, we all have those thoughts. Yeah, I'm killing it. I'm pretty amazing. I've got whatever. But, you know, God is good, and He reminds us, it's not you, it's me. And, you know, we get those reminders quite a bit. But it's also good to remind yourself, you know, just let yourself know. And I mean, and I think, you know, another thing that C.S. Lewis says is, you know, humility isn't like if a girl is beautiful and says, oh, I'm just ugly. That's not humility, right? Or if someone's really smart and goes, no, I'm stupid. That's not humility either, right? That's just lying, right? And so sometimes we're kind of taught that that's the way to be humble, is to say, oh, I'm not smart, No, I am smart. And God, and glory be to God, right? And you know, that guy over there, he's really dumb. And you know what? That's what he got, and that's what I have, you know? And it's okay to acknowledge God's gifts, but acknowledge them as gifts, you know? St. Paul says, we brought nothing in this world, surely we'll take nothing out, right? So everything we have, we got. One way or another, whether it be genetics, which I think is most of it, or, you know, upbringing or parenting or whatever, right? I mean, everything we have, you know, we got. So very little is us. It's delusional to think it's you. And I like that you said, you know, well, you know, the things I can control, well, you know, although we don't really control anything. That's very insightful for you to know that, right? Because control is an illusion. It's a figment of your imagination. There is no control. You control nothing. And the sooner you realize that, the better off you are. Right? Any other questions, comments? Criticisms, complaints? All right, we can do icon talk if you want, but we can end as well. All right, glory be to God forever, amen. Back hurts.